episode.
We have an amazing first guest of the show.
I know.
About half a year deep, we was doing it just us three Florida guys, and then we're bringing on a soon-to-be Florida guy, super experienced real estate investor, awesome dad, awesome guy, Eric Brewer. Welcome.
Welcome, Eric. Thank you.
Well, thanks for having me.
Love it. Fellow Pennsylvanian.
Yeah.
Prior to the show, we were having a conversation about where's better to live, Pennsylvania or Florida. Eric wants the heat, and I want the cold.
I don't really think that's an actual disputable item. You're engaging in that dialogue just for the sport of it. There's nothing about you that believes that it's a better place to live.
Yeah, and your first year, I think you're going to stand by that statement. And then when year two comes along and you settled in that 110-degree humidity and that temperature barrels down on you as you just try to go from one appointment to the next and your butt is sitting in a pool of sweat, you're going to call me and say, Brandon, I miss those days of this fresh cut grass with the weeds.
I wouldn't hold my
falling
breath. I wouldn't hold my breath.
Yeah, I'll follow up with you. I was born in Trenton and lived in Bucks County, and then moved to Baltimore. Been in Baltimore my whole life. Here in Florida, 6 months. I don't think that's going to be true for me. Papa P. I think I'm going to love it down here. So we'll let you know. Eric and I will keep you posted.
Yeah, stay tuned.
You know what? When I first moved down, I thought the same thing. It was March. Everyone's wearing hoodies. I walked around in shorts and no shirt and no shoes. Like, why is everyone freaking out about this? Summer came, hanging out, no problem. A couple years went by. I was one of them. I was a Floridian, complaining about the heat. It's okay, guys.
Happens to us all.
I can't wait to have a reconnect with y'all in a couple of years on this topic.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well,
we got a lot to cover today.
Let's
John,
do it.
do.
I'm excited.
Got a lot to cover today. Quick updates. Was awesome seeing some 80/20 Academy mastermind members in San Diego for Dan's wedding. He's off honeymooning in Europe, and he's showing how you can take a 2-month sabbatical from your business. So he's actually creating systems and processes in place he has for coaching there. This week, we're going to be at the Family Mastermind in Tampa. So definitely reach out if you're going to be there, trying to get some pickup basketball going. At the hotel, they have courts. Josh Culler tells me, so going to get some stuff there. So definitely reach out if you're going to be in the area. And then the biggest thing, Investor Fuse product-wise, IF3 has transactions in beta released. Met with Mike on our CS team, who's the man. Went through, explained a bunch of different exit strategies, which we'll be talking about on this episode today. And super excited to jam with some Investor Fuse members, helping our developers build out the transactions and dispo functionality of the CRM.
Yeah, that's the fun part about it is like you get to a point when you build any product, any feature, and you're like, all right, I feel like we've got a solid foundation, but you need great feedback to figure out where to take it and see how it fits in people's business. So that's certainly the spot that we're at now is a solid foundation to work with for transactions management, and anybody that's a customer can join the beta and kind of help give us some direction in how they want to see that part of the product fit into their lives.
Eric, are you an Investor Fuse customer? Who do you use for your CRM?
Salesforce.
Salesforce?
Yeah, Salesforce.
A lot of people use them.
Mm-hmm.
Were you ever on Podio, or were you straight on Salesforce?
We had a mess of different CRMs at one point. Like we had is it Boomtown, which is a retail CRM, and we were using like 5 different operating systems and storing information in different platforms, and got introduced to Salesforce and started like a 3-year build out. I probably have $200,000 invested in building out Salesforce, and I'm currently hiring for a full-time in-house Salesforce admin.
Wow.
It never ends.
Never ends.
It doesn't.
Ever.
Like I remember when I used to do IT consulting, there was like one of our clients was a Salesforce developer, and it's just like it's never ending. I mean, it's amazing what it can do, but it takes you quite some time and some dollars to get to that level. But it's pretty powerful.
If you, I know we're getting off topic with just a question. If you had to do it over though, would you go Salesforce again, or would you just use somebody else's pre-built like actual wholesale?
So that's the problem. There is, in my experience, there is no version of something that's pre-built that's going to match up with exactly how I want to communicate with my customers, the frequency, the dashboards. So whatever I would buy, I would just probably have better expectations about the length of time and commitment it takes to get it where I want it to be.
So that's the key right there. The way I want it to be. Not a lot of people kind of know that of what their vision is of how they want to operate their software or tech, but you do. So you spent the money to create it
and continue to spend it.
And continue. It's a never-ending project, man. Yeah, trust me.
It is.
I know. But when you have something
either
in mind of what you want, I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. Well, speaking of which, though, Eric's got 15 years of experience, not just building out Salesforce, but also doing a lot of stuff from the flips, wholesaling, creative, and as well retail. He has a whole retail side of the business. So we thought it'd be fun to kind of bring up a conversation about different ways, all the different ways to make money in real estate, and kind of list those out and have a conversation of not just what is easier as in to make money, but as in transactional volume, effort, time, commitment to these things, and kind of go through each one and look at it from a perspective of somebody with as much experience as him or us and say, what would be the difference? Knowing what we know now, not necessarily doing anything different, but more of tips or advice as you're going into each one of these categories. And if there's a different way or a different route to kind of crawl that REI career ladder. All right, we got a little visual aid for you too. A little visual.
Do a visual aid. We're gonna fill out a little chart today, which will be fun because as we kept thinking about this, I mean, there's lots of different ways. And in order for us to kind of narrow down if there even is a fastest way to generate wealth in real estate, we want to list it out so people can kind of see us go through this. So let's kind of figure out how we're going to rate things. So we kind of came up with 4 ideas already on this, and it's going to be transactional.
As in volume, how many transactions you have to do to actually make that money.
Yeah. Got effort.
How much of your effort you have to put in to actually make it. Time, not as in how much time effort, but how long it takes to make that money, to actually stack up wealth, do the deals, close the deals. And money, ease of money, difficulty of getting it, raising it, finding it, acquiring it. I'm going to start the ball rolling here, and I just want to start. I think number one way I think people think of getting into real estate is being a realtor.
Yep.
I think that's the number one thing. And I know we had talked previously with Eric, right? You kind of see that. People see their friends, their family, and they say, oh, I could do that.
Mm-hmm.
What are kind of your thoughts, Eric, on the realtor aspect? I mean, making money wise, you got to do a lot of volume in your market. Pennsylvania's got a pretty decent market, right? I mean, you're in the York, Harrisburg area. So what's your median price there? Like $250?
Yeah.
So that's not bad for a realtor. $250, making 5-6%, I assume.
I mean, Frank, they're normally making half of that 5 or 6. So
as a one side, you're correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So 2.5. Yeah. So that's probably the biggest challenge, right? Like I think from a real estate agent perspective, one of the biggest influencing factors as to whether or not that's the path you should take, whether it's where you begin or something that I didn't add any retail aspect of our business until we had built out a pretty robust investing company and realized that there was a lot of residual opportunities that I was missing out on because I wasn't licensed and didn't have the license aspect of our business to be able to refer, clients to. But the value of, people that live in California, let's say the average transaction $600,000-$700,000. I think the amount of work that goes into that transaction is not double what it is here. Oftentimes, the less expensive property requires more work because there's a lot more education that comes along with it. It's a less, discerning buyer that can get themselves excited about buying something and then have second thoughts, halfway through the transaction when something pops up that reveals that they might need to put money into the house, or there's, an issue with one of the inspections that came back and they, because of maybe limited resources, they're burning up all of their savings, putting 3.5% down. And at the first sign of something wrong with the house, they flake out and they end up starting the process all over again, showing them another 15 houses and hoping they buy one. So if I was a real estate agent, one of the biggest contributing factors would be I would gravitate towards the higher priced markets because I'm investing
to do less volume.
Correct. Each one of your sales carries a sometimes 2 to 3x return on commission.
Yeah. So we can say, but I agree with you though. I think other than, you got your key metro markets, right? Where you're LA, California, Miami, New York, those types of big metro cities, Eastern Seaboard cities. A lot of them though, you're talking that 250, 350 price range, but to make good volume, I read an article that said the average realtor, obviously, COVID excluding, but the average realtor does anywhere from 6 to 12 deals a year. And so depending on their commission, you got to do a lot of volume to beat that. So if you're really crushing it and saying doing 30, that's a lot of work to sell a 250 or a 200K home. So I'd say, John, we definitely put the high for the transaction. And Eric, you're saying it's a lot of effort unless you're in the in the luxury market.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if you look at someone that does, let's say reasonably in their first full year, if they did 3 to 5 million, right? Yeah. Gross commissions for them are probably $90,000 to $150,000. If they did that amount of volume in their first year, they're probably on a team, someone that generated leads for them. So they're giving up at least half of that. Yeah. So they're making 50 to 75K in their first year doing, let's say 30 transactions would be 600. They're doing a fair amount of work to make 75K a year.
And Eric hasn't even gotten into all the other costs included in that, right? And we don't need to break it down, but you're talking MLS fees, dues, travel, car, gas, all those things. He's talking net of the brokerage that you receive, not even net on your tax return. And then time, obviously excluding the last 2 years or so as a listing agent, I would say being a buyer's and a listing agent, it would probably take you anywhere from 2 to 3 months to either secure the listing, close the listing, or find the buyer, close the buyer type of thing, correct? About 90 days, you would say, from start to finish?
Yeah.
Prior to COVID?
Yeah. And they're more than likely getting a buyer before they get a listing. The majority of people, when they start, and the only reason I point out that difference is because at some point in every realtor's business, they desire to move their focus from buyers to sellers. But a seller's more particular about who they work with when they sell their home because they're paying the 6%. The buyer's getting your service for free. So if you're nice and you answered the phone and you're willing to run around and show them a couple houses, most people will go ahead and hire you as a buyer's agent because it's free. So it takes, say, 3 to 5 years on average to graduate from a buyer's agent to a listing agent.
100% accurate on that. Although there's a lot of buyer's agents or a lot of new agents who want to immediately become a listing agent. But I would say 90 days. So 90 days on the listing side, but I was also saying 90 days on the buyer agent side, because when you find a buyer, it's going to take you about 30, 45 days to find them the house. So I would say time's kind of like medium. I don't think that's overtly or overly long. And then money difficulty, I think easy, right? It's not, you don't need to raise money. You don't need much money to become a realtor. I don't know what the costs are in Pennsylvania. I haven't taken that test in a while, but
you're getting leads. You're getting leads most likely.
Well, Eric kind of touched on that though. If you're starting out and you're on a team, a lot of your lead gen is going to come from a part of the team, especially if you're on a pretty well performing team. Or even if you work with somebody like Eric, he's probably got his team set up in a certain way because he's got all those excess opportunities from his investment properties. So you're getting kind of spoon-fed, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So a lot of transaction, a lot of effort, medium time, and easy money. What's the next thing that people kind of step into? If it's not realtor, what's the other easy way to make money in real estate? What would you say? Flipping or wholesaling?
Probably wholesaling is the most popular one now from ease. I don't know that anybody that flips houses would describe it as easy.
Probably not.
You're right. But
I guess it's all relative. I mean, if they were drilling wells, maybe for a living, flipping houses becomes easy. But other than that, it's relatively challenging. So, yeah, I would say wholesale is probably the path of least resistance for most people.
But that's definitely got a high transaction volume, right? I mean, there's no way you're going to say, I mean, depending on how you're categorizing it, you got to do high volume to really make money in that.
I would disagree. I mean, someone that does cold calling and texting and does one deal a month and makes $20K and keeps 70% of that and performs all the labor themselves. If you're looking at a similar infrastructure as what a standalone buyer's agent or entry-level realtor would be, I think you can do 1 to 2 deals a month at 20 grand a pop and make 6 figures with minimal to zero overhead.
So what are we going to say? Low transaction volume? Okay.
I mean, it depends what you're trying to achieve, right? Like,
I agree with that.
I don't think there's as much market. Like, we're in I would say what I've noticed about our realtor commissions here is they're in direct correlation to the price of the house. So 2.5% here on 250 grand is just less than it is in a market that's $500,000. But we average above average wholesale profits in that same market. So even though our transactional price is lower or median home price is lower, in our market, our numbers are slightly higher than, depends. It's always hard to get the truth out of people about what their average profit per transaction is. But I think generally speaking, most people hover around that 15 to 17 sub $20,000 number, and ours is closer to 25,000.
So I was actually going to say about 10% then. So you figure your gross is 10%, but when you're saying for a realtor, right? Realtor's only making 2.5, 3, so you're making 4 times as much on the average house per transaction that your typical buyer's agent, listing agent would make at a 2.5.
Correct.
Yeah. But see, I would disagree though. And when it comes to like transactional volume, I guess it's all preference, but I was going to say, does anybody get into wholesaling and say, I only want to do 1 deal a month? Don't they all want to scale and become the next big guru, and they want to do like 20, or am I just mistaken?
No, I think those are just the people that only want to do 2 deals a month. We don't often talk to because they're not visible. They're not out network. They only want to do 1 or 2 deals.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The people that say they want to scale and be the next guru by nature are more outspoken and visible. So those are just the people that are more easily recognizable because they're loud.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I see where you're going with that.
I can tell you, we just did this isn't specific to wholesaling, but I spent a lot of time with a data, aggregate company, and like 80% of the transactions that are sold to investors are sold to first-time investors.
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
Right, and they pay they buy the most inventory and they pay the highest price. So I mean, to think about that, right? There's more of those people actively buying a home than there is people that are buying their 2nd, 3rd, 5th, 10th property of the year.
Getting into it. And you're talking fix and flippers, right? Like
someone that took deeds. So I don't know what they did with it, but like the only way we can track it is the fact that they took deed and it's a non-owner occupied buyer. What their exit strategy was with it, it's hard to tell unless they resell it in that same calendar year. But so my point is there's more people that buy 1 property or do lower volume. It's the old 80-20 rule, right? Like if you look at real estate agents or wholesalers, like the majority of the business is done by a small portion of the population. I think there's lots of people out there that either do or probably should focus on doing a moderate volume, because most people that try and scale do it wrong, and they scale mess and chaos rather than growing responsibly. But I think there's tons of people out there that live a really good life doing a handful of deals, a month or a dozen or so a year, and have minimal overhead and make a 6-figure income. You literally can do one deal a month, make 17.5, have expenses that are less than $5,000 to $7,000 a month, and net $120,000 a year doing one deal a month.
Yeah,
Love that.
Yeah, it's just I get you. It's just hard for somebody like me to think like that, though. When you're talking like that, and you're right though, but we don't talk to those people. Those people are. So but he's right though, in the terms of this, like when we're talking about to get into it, you're saying it's a low. You don't have to do a lot of volume to make the same or more amount of money as the previous category, being a realtor. So we'd say low. Yeah. But would you agree that the effort is a not low, but probably like medium? It's not a lot of effort, but if you are at the category you said of doing one deal a month, they're probably actually putting in a lot of effort because they don't have all the staff. So they're probably doing the acquisition, the disposition, the running, getting the photos, or the hiring of the runner, all that stuff. And they're doing their own TC work. So where would you be at on the effort then?
I think it's relative to the volume, right? So like if it's low transactional volume, it's probably medium effort. If it was high transactional volume, it would be excruciating effort.
Yeah.
But, to close one deal a month, you probably need to contract, let's say 2, and, 50% of that may fall out for one reason or another, particularly if you're doing something virtual. So I think the effort's moderate. It's not a ton. You can work a super hyper focused list. When you're doing that low volume, a lot of people that get into this business are really good at sales. So they're going to convert at a higher, I would say, percentage than someone that's outsourced or hired people inside of acquisitions. To manage 2 transactions a month would be, once you have some experience, would be really, really easy.
And then I would say time for both of them, though. I would say time would be low. Would you say low for time? I'd say low.
Yeah,
I think that's one of the benefits of wholesaling in general, whether you're at scale or whether you're doing 1 or 2, is that you're flipping this thing and getting paid in under 30 days. And money. Now this is something money, because you got the people out there saying that you could do this with 0 money, and then you have a lot of people saying that that's a lie. You need money to be able to not just scale, but for marketing, running your operations, hiring people. I mean, what would you say on the money difficulty? I don't think money's easy. I would say it's at least moderate. You don't need a lot unless you're scaling, but you do need some.
I mean, there's some form of investment. You're going to have to buy a list. You're going to have to invest in some software, some hardware. And then the one thing we don't account for a lot is the time. Like if we spend 50 hours a week, 60 hours a week doing it ourselves, and we're not paying ourselves a salary, you have to equate that. Had you been working a W-2 job or doing something else, you would have earned, say, $800 to $1,000 a week in that time. So your time is probably the biggest investment. You're going to have to spend a little bit of money getting like some semblance of a list of people to call that have a high likelihood of selling.
Definitely put moderate there. Okay. I'm with you on this. Well, then that brings us into the fix and flip then. Now, you made a comment earlier where you were like, nobody who does fix and flip would say it's easy. And I agree with that. Now, my question is so we could sit here and say it's like a wholesaler where if you're a flipper, you could do 1 flip a year and make as much as you were, making it a W-2 job. But outside of that person, don't you need to do a decent size volume as a flipper to really get your business going, to make it into a business and have that steady flow of contractors, work, systems? Or should you just look at it as a one flip every 6 months type of thing?
I think that's difficult because it gets real. I mean, you have expenses remain consistent and income becomes inconsistent. So if you do, let's say you project to do 1 flip a month, one of the biggest contributing factors to whether or not you're going to sell 1 deal a month is the completion of the renovations. And depending on what your scope of renovations are, you might have to plan 3 or 4 months in advance. Like a property that I buy in September, if I execute on my renovation schedule, may be ready for sale in December. What if there's permit issues? I have contractor issues, material supply issues. It now becomes a January transaction. I can't just go out and buy another piece of inventory that's going to close in December. So now I may have no revenue for December, and that inventory has got pushed to January, which is great because I'm going to make double the money in January, but my expenses did not stop incurring in the month of December.
They're still rolling.
So you got to look at, if my average renovation takes 8 weeks, how many properties do I have to have active that I'm managing so that one of those properties comes out and can be marketed and sold and delivered in a calendar month? Now you're into inventory management. You're executing on a schedule. In most cases, particularly at low volume, you're managing 1099 contractors. So you're at the mercy of how well they manage their business. So the hardest part about this is most people that get into this business have a high aptitude in marketing and sales, and it's not very valuable when you're in the construction business. Like your ability to market and sell is rendered almost useless in the construction business. It's all about systems and processes and operations. So when you try and pull your skill set over into being a flipper, you will generally fall flat on your face.
So where's your sweet spot, man? Like, so I agree with you. I don't think, because when I started out, I did the one flip here and there, and it's very, like you said, you just can't, it's just so sporadic. You can't make a business out of it. You really got to start buying more. Where's your sweet spot for transactional volume? Because then you do too many. I mean, that's a whole beast in and of itself. So where would you like to be on a sweet spot of this? Maybe buying 2, 3 a month, 3, 5 a month?
I think it's all relative to your overall desired volume and gross profit. For us, it's normally, so if we do, let's say 35 transactions a month, our target is about 12 renovation projects. And then the balance, that other 65, 70% is split amongst wholesale and novations. So in my business, let's say it's around 30 couple percent in 3 buckets: wholesale, wholesale and novations, and then fix and flip. Our 90% of everything I renovate and sell is a turnkey product because it's a very predictable disposition. I already know most of my stuff's already sold long before completion. That buyer's buying it based on, cash on cash return and net cash flow. And they're really like, they're just basing their decision on the quality based on a home inspection. They don't care about the design. They're buying an asset that produces a return. And as long as those returns are met, they're going to buy it. They don't care about the color.
You're not flipping to the mom and dad.
No, our average investor buys at least 2 to 3 deals a year from us. They're a high W-2 income person that makes, say, north of 150 grand a year, but has no access to invest in real estate. That requires a full-time commitment from them. And they generally live in areas where rental properties are not affordable, where the rent to value ratio is skewed. So a lot of our buyers come from Canada, the West Coast, some higher ticket areas in the Midwest, where we're selling rental properties at $140,000 that rent for $1,500, and that same property in their home market about $500,000 or $700,000, something crazy.
Okay, so I would say we are at like mid to high transaction volume and effort. You already said effort's high.
Yes.
And time, I mean, you are kind of already said that too. High, right? I mean,
yeah,
it could be low if you do a lipstick, but you can't guarantee anything.
Then those deals are in high demand. The ones that you generally have the opportunity to purchase are medium to large renovations that the average person's turning away.
Yeah. Money difficulty.
It's the worst.
Yeah. Cash flow, private money, hard money, monthly payments,
expensive.
Insurance payments, carrying cost. It's high. God, it looks like fix and flip is like the worst one yet. I got 2 more I'd really like to put on here before we move on, but I would say the next one I kind of want to, because I think wholesaling is the entry and flipping is kind of like the next step up. So I kind of want to do realtor is the entry, and then a lot of realtors say I want to become a broker and own my own brokerage and manage my own realtors type of thing. I already know where I'm at on this being a broker, but transaction volume, I got to say high. In order to make money, you got to be high. Manage a lot of transactions and manage a lot of agents, in my mind. What do you think?
It's the highest.
The highest. Write that, John. Put EST on the end of that, baby. Highest.
I feel like this is going to be a lot of red. All right, effort.
I don't know. I guess it depends,
Probably
right?
minimal. Like the reality is if you buy, let's say, an existing brokerage, it's a franchise effectively, right? So a lot of the management or effort, the structure is created by the broker, or I'm sorry, the franchise, whether it's Remax or EXP or Keller Williams, whoever it is. I would say the effort's minimal.
Yeah.
Okay.
The only reason why I was saying, I'd agree, because the only thing is you got to manage it. Just don't hire new agents, I guess, if that's what we're saying then. Just don't hire 0 to 1 year agents. Yeah. So, okay, we'll go minimal as long as you don't hire new agents, because those are always taking up the most time. Time to make money on a transaction. I mean, I guess it's
The same as realtor, right? I mean, it's the same transaction. You're just
Yeah.
taking the half of the.
and money. I mean, you don't really need a lot of money to start a brokerage.
No.
I would say it's easy.
Even if you're gonna do
Buying one. See, I've never done that. I've only started
Marketing, training, getting a team set up. I don't know. Could be more.
It depends on the normal path of starting a brokerage, is kind of flopping your license over, getting a logo, getting it, bringing the team that you have with you, or asking a couple agents and then kind of supplying them with leads, because to become a broker, you probably already have a good book of business. So you probably already have offshoots that people feed off of, and then those people feed off of those people, and kind of, it's going to cost money, but I would say ease of starting and getting the brokerage open, I would say it's pretty minimal. Unless you are buying, I don't know how much to buy an EXP or a Remax franchise or anything like that.
It
I
can't
can't
be
speak
a
to
lot.
that. No, not a lot.
It can't be. Too many people own one.
Maybe back in the day it was probably more expensive, but
And I bet they would finance it, and it can come out of your franchise fees. I'm sure they're pretty creative when it comes to your ability to be able to buy a franchise brokerage.
That's true.
And then I think the last thing that people really think about in here is categories. And I think it's kind of like wholesale and wholesale to scale is landlord, but landlord of small assets and landlord of big assets, right? So you have like, whether you're buying your individual rental or whether you're buying a commercial asset or an apartment building or a park, those are all totally different classes of types of investors, right?
Yes.
Different stages. I would say to build wealth as being a single family landlord, I think you got to do a lot of volume. I watched a video today where the lady said you could buy a duplex. To buy the mansion that you want, you buy a duplex. Each rents for $1,500. That gives you $3,000 a month, and then you can use that $3,000 to go buy your own large house in your dream neighborhood, and your bills are free. And I said, well, what happened to the bills on the duplex and the repairs? That makes like zero sense to me. And that's the guru saying that, and I was like, makes zero sense. I mean, you don't cash flow much off of these things. A couple $100 a door. And then you can't even spend that. You got to put that in reserves. You got to save that. I think you need to hit a certain threshold. So I think you got to do high volume on this.
You either have to do high volume or have a 25-year plan. So if you start when you're 23 to 25 years old and you get 30-year mortgages and you buy one a year, you'll have, when you retire, you may have 15 paid off properties that either increases your cash flow or you can cash out, refinance, and get a lump sum of money from those. But so you either have to do high volume in a short period of time or low to moderate volume over an extended period of time.
What about being large properties though? I don't think you need to do a lot of transactions for those though. whether it's a park or an apartment.
Yeah, I mean, I think the key ingredient there is when you have a 150 unit rental property and rents go up by $50 a month, you do 50 times 150 all in one location versus across a single family portfolio. Those leases and the values of those may change at different times, and it's really hard to have rent increases have that big of an impact in a short period of time. So much quicker path, assuming that you're able to acquire them at a similar pace. I mean,
which comes into the money, the money difficulty, which is going to be higher. What about, so effort? I mean, maybe I'm just not a fan of individual house rentals, but I'm going to put the effort as high. I would say, I mean, having to drive around all these things, unless you're hiring a property management company and then you're just cash flowing less, I would say the effort's high.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, that would make sense.
Could correlate to both those, high and low, if it's the short term or the long term.
Under what Eric was saying, the landlord of a large multifamily property, I mean, you only got to go to one site. So I would say that's low. Time into the deal, I think, is different too. I think, again, it's high and low.
Mm-hmm.
Money
and then definitely going to be, I would say, high and high.
Yeah,
correct.
All right. Now, kind of taking a look at this. John, can you zoom out?
Yeah.
The one thing that I think we're looking at here, when you're taking a look at them, regardless of what path you take, essentially, I wanted to add something on top of this and say creative finance, I think, would change a lot of this, correct? If you could do creative finance, I think a lot of these things become easier, or the time involved or the money difficulty starts to go lower, right? So taking on like landlord properties where we have high money difficulty, doing creative finance, it becomes a lot easier because you don't need to raise the money if you're doing something like a seller finance or a sub-2 or something, correct?
There's some element of it, but I mean, unless you're buying a turnkey property, there's also going to be some type of money required to get it up to a rentable or financeable standard. Unless somehow you're convincing the seller to lend you that money on top of the purchase price of the property, which is certainly not unheard of. But yeah, I mean, I would say it drastically reduces the complexity of acquiring enough money. It's easier to build a 100-unit single-family rental portfolio if you do them all sub-2 than it is to do that by way of raising individual loans or lines of credit to buy 100+ units.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, and what about, so, and I know you're pretty much an expert on this topic, man, is we talked about the sub-2 and the seller finance making that easier, but wouldn't novations kind of make, so novations, I think, would make wholesaling easier. And then I know there's a whole group of people, and you could disagree with me if you want, but there's a whole group of people that I heard, I've never done it, but use novations on the side of flipping too, where they don't actually have to take on the property. They can do a novation and kind of renovate the home without taking ownership of it. And then they avoid the whole FHA thing. I mean, would novations make wholesaling and flipping an easier and even less transaction, less difficulty of money because you're making more of it faster and you don't need the money to take down deals per se? Would novations help make those things either more profitable or easier to do?
I think it has a bigger impact on wholesale than it does flipping. Like the things that are difficult about flipping, the only one that novations would really impact is the money in a drastic way. It helps increase. I mean, it's the only thing that's changed by doing it. You still got to renovate that damn thing. That's the hard part. It still takes the same amount of time to do a renovation on a novated property as it does one that you paid for yourself. But inside of wholesale real estate, novations has the biggest impact because it's a fair amount. About 40% of the leads that we talk to have properties in decent condition. that we could control by way of a purchase agreement and dispo through the MLS to a retail buyer at historically higher profits and still have it be a wholesale style transaction. Like, and normally in order to get to, like, look at wholesale, money difficult, medium, time low. Like, in order to go to the path of normally getting to a retail buyer, you're either fix and flipping, or at a minimum, you're doing a wholesale, which still means now it drives up the money difficulty. You gotta have some type of money to pay for the property to take it down and then sell it. Correct. So when you novate it, you're able to capitalize on wholesale, and you're able to, experience some of the buyers and profit margins that typically are reserved for flippers, but you don't have to engage in all of that money activity.
Yeah, but it's got to be more difficult, though.
I've
never done a novation, but it's got to be more difficult, right?
There's more lifting on the back end. Like, there's a heavier responsibility on the transaction coordinating side. You either have to have someone on your team that's licensed or have a solid relationship with a licensed agent that can get the property over to the MLS, knows how to it's a retail transaction. So there's, one of the things we use in all of our novations is what we call a buyer's disclosure. We all are familiar with a seller's disclosure, where agents won't even show our property until they have 37 pages of all this crap. But then we're supposed to make a decision about whether or not we're willing to work with a buyer based on a pre-approval. So we ask for a buyer's disclosure. It's a written authorization from them for the lender to disclose credit score, debt to income, and their source of down payment, because we found those are the three things related to a loan that have a high likelihood.
That is genius.
So we use that on our novations, because when we make a commitment to say, hey, Mr. Seller, we've been able to execute at the second phase of this transaction, and we've gone out and find this third-party buyer, we feel comfortable saying that we can commit to that 60-day settlement that we had talked about when we first met. We're going to now execute this second layer of documents. I'll happy to walk you through that. And we can plan on closing, let's say, the end of October, which is probably a little bit sooner than what we had discussed originally.
So you got 3 buyers wanting your property, right? You ask for the buyer's disclosure, then based on that information, you're deciding, so that way you don't essentially have a buyer fall out during due diligence period or loan commitment period. So you're not guaranteeing, but you're increasing your odds of closing that and making that guarantee to that seller happen.
Correct.
Huh. I've never heard of that before, man. Never.
The two things that'll kill most deals: 3, appraisal, which we just kind of have to deal with and manage when the time comes. Lending situations that we're unfamiliar with or the lender hasn't disclosed us, which is probably one of those 3 things I just talked about. And then home inspection. So 2 out of those 3 I can address on the front end. We get a home inspection up front on all of our novations, and then we advertise it with the property and say, hey, here's a reputable third-party home inspection. If you buy this house, we're agreeing in advance to take or address these 3 significant findings, which are oftentimes the same stuff that would pop up on like an FHA or VA appraisal. And that's one of the things when we talk about novations going into it, people are like, well, how do I know what it's going to sell for? And what should I project as far as repairs? The baseline to use is an FHA appraisal. The most profitable novation transactions we have sell to FHA, VA, USDA buyers, and they all have the exact same condition requirements from an appraisal perspective. So when you go into it, you can say, hey, I know I'm going to have to replace that electric panel, that twisted, knob and tube or whatever. It doesn't work for FHA. That's $1,800. There's a couple missing handrails and some GFCIs. That's another $1,000. I'm going into the transaction anticipating $3,000 worth of appraisal related repairs.
Is that what that's your average, is what you're saying for you and because you run an
Ours is less than $2,000. Over the last several years, it's below $2,000 per transaction.
And you have your novation course that you sell, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And is all of this everything? Because I've never heard of this buyer disclosure. It has me intrigued. I mean, is that a part of it? You go through all of that with your students?
Yeah, we have. There's a lot of different tools in there, like a novation calculator that can show you what the difference between your wholesale offer versus a novation deal, how to craft the offer and know that you're going into the transaction with a reasonable amount of profit, because you're accounting for some commissions on the back end you normally wouldn't spend on a wholesale deal. You're accounting for some renovations, or I would call them repairs. Like the ideal novation property does not need renovation. It would benefit from repairs to get it through an appraisal. right? Or a home inspection. And that's the biggest chunk. Like a lot of people are like, all the deals I do need a ton of work. Well, yeah, because your wholesale method only allows you to convert those deals. You're not paying attention to the other 90% of your leads that you couldn't do anything with. If you start to look at that, you'll see, and I've noticed over 11 years I've been doing this, about 40% of all new net leads have properties that are in generally pretty good condition. The seller has a reasonable amount of motivation, but not enough for us to be able to lock it up at an MAO or a number that we can go wholesale it. But they will come down enough in price where I could take it to the retail market and sell it for a spread that's north of $25,000.
So where you got to be at then? What, like, and just rough number, like 80% of ARV? 85?
A little more than that. So if you're in a market, let's say that the median sale price is $250.
Yeah.
If you're around 85% of what, when I say as is, I'm not saying you're selling it as is with no inspections. I'm saying untouched. I'm not improving it. Its current condition retail value, you can be about 85% when those values are north of 250 and still make around 20 grand.
Okay. Now, listen, I was telling you, I'm looking into Novation. So I've recently signed up for some other creative finance, seller finance stuff. And for my team, I want like a Novations training. So I was really excited when Carlos and John said we were having you on, because my question is, and I had this question, I'm in multiple markets, right? So what I can't wrap my head around is locally I got agents. That's not a problem. How am I doing this in multiple markets though? And is that what you do or your students do? Are you teaching them how to make relationships and because I can figure it out as a realtor. How am I explaining this to a realtor in the Dallas, Texas market where I don't live, or the North Carolina market I don't live? How am I doing that?
So the short version is, inside of our curriculum, we provide scripts and different documents that help introduce this. I mean, I've been long enough, and I think you have too, that like 15 years ago, like it was hard to get an agent to understand an assignment. It was hard to get a title company to do an assignment, right? This is wholesaling 2.0. It's for a long time been completely disregarded. No one really knew how to use it. The old conventional thinking that you talked about earlier is it was used as a fix and flip method. So anybody that was wholesaling would steer away from it. So what we've discovered is it's a wholesale style transaction that allows you to exit at wholesale and retail values. That's the easiest way to explain it. So you have to be able to introduce this, and what we teach is a phased introduction. I can tell you, if you sent over a purchase agreement with Novation language, a limited power of attorney, a Novation addendum, a net proceeds sheet, and a third-party agreement of sale showing you're making $25,000 to $55,000, agents and brokers and company, they'll melt down because they just don't understand it. So what we teach is like, hey, Carlos, I'm sending over a new agreement of sale. It's a deal that we just got locked up with a seller. They're super excited about working with us. You're going to notice we put some new language in there about Novations. It's one of our new exit strategies. Just wanted to point that out to you. Let me know if you have any questions. The language in the contract is, people ask me all the time, let me see your contract. It's like 10 words. Buyer reserves the right to novate the property. Like that's it, right? But by including that language, you now have permission. But one of the things we spend a ton of time on is teaching how to fully disclose what that looks like to a seller, so that there's not issues when they see it listed on Zillow, or their neighbor points out that they saw it listed on realtor.com. I'm eventually going to bring them a third-party agreement of sale that has a significant spread between what I bought their home for, I'm selling it for. So that need not be a surprise once I now have another broker involved, another agent involved, their lender involved, and I got to go back and explain to them that my seller won't sign because it didn't do a good job of positioning the deal on the front. So that's so you have to introduce it to an agent. Historically, we found that when you can identify across different markets, agents that are doing investment deals, they're either listing and selling a fix and flippers deal, or you see them doing some wholesale transactions. Those are the people that are most likely to understand how this works without a ton of brain damage on your end. But it's not that hard to find.
So, man, that was
going to be my question. So
yeah, go ahead.
So, I mean, when I started explaining to me, because I don't mean my real estate experience is those that use my software, and to me it was like people are going to be like the legal language, the documentation, but really seems to be more about the seller expectation and how you're
100%.
handling the relationship.
Like people ask me all the time, is this legal? Yes. There's nowhere where it's not legal. I don't know what the hell like people are drinking that they think like, well, it's only legal in some states. Novation is language that's been around for 200 years. In its simplest form, it's the replacement of an obligation or a term in a contract with someone else, right? It happens in government contracts. If someone's hired to build 1,000 space rockets and they novate or outsource 50 of those to another company, they've simply replaced their obligation in that agreement to someone else. It's actually a far more transparent when you learn it the right way, the way that we teach it. And the conversation you're having on the front end, it says, Carlos, like in order for me to achieve this price that you're looking for, I need two things from you. It's reasonable access and permission from you to put the property on the open market. I'm going to go out and search for what we call one of 4 buyers that may buy this under different circumstances. And I'm comfortable getting one of those 4 things to the finish line. It may be some renovations. It may be a lot of renovations. It may only be a home inspection item or 2. I'm willing to take on that responsibility if you'll give me the permission to take it to the retail market. And when that happens and one of those buyers comes along, I'm going to take care of all the responsibility. Your bottom line is you're going to net the amount of money we agree on. It's the only way I can make this deal work. I can't simply buy your home, close on it, fix it up, and go out and sell it and make the profit that I think is reasonable. If you give me the flexibility on those 2 things, I think I can get this done for you. So when you have that conversation with them on the front end, like, the expectations are set, like where most people, let's be honest, when they wholesale, it's like, yeah, I'm going to buy it cash. You don't have cash. You don't have access to cash. You're using someone else's cash. And when you bring by my partner or my contractor, you're really hoping that you're bringing by 15 of your cash buyers you've never met with have done a deal. It's the reality, right?
Yeah.
We're telling half truths and calling ourselves an investor. This forces you on the front end to say, these are my intentions. When that happens, I should make money, but these are the things I'm going to do that you don't have to, and that's how I'm making my profit. So it forces you to be more transparent.
Yeah, but I make 65 G's on you, and I bring this paperwork, right? Yeah. What do they say to you?
Historically, nothing. I've already told them that, hey, remember I told you I was going to go out and try to find a buyer that would buy it from me in its current condition, and I may have to pay commissions. I may have to get through an appraisal or 2. You can see here on the contract that they're doing an FHA appraisal. I'm not sure what that's going to look like. I may have to do some work. I may not. But this is what we anticipated when we first met. I was lucky enough to find someone that's paying me a good bit more than you. But the good news is I'm going to take care of those commissions. I'm going to take care of all the inspections. Anything that pops on the appraisal is my responsibility. There's this misconception that you don't think people see what you made on a wholesale deal at some point after it's done. You're full of crap if you don't think they don't, right? You're right. They do. So we have this misconception that people won't let us make money. They will. You just have to be honest and transparent about how you're going to make that money. You can't say I'm going to fix it up and sell it and then sell it as is. That's a lie. Yeah. Right. When I say I'm going to take it to the open market,
we lie all the time. We lie all the time.
Yeah.
And it makes us feel good because we think we're protecting ourselves. But here you're saying you got to be honest. Well, here's the thing. So if I sign up for this course, right, and I come over and there's a link at the bottom, John's running across, and John, you got Eric's link to his course up in there?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So if I go and sign up and I take this class from you, do I then have to go and teach my acquisition guys, or can they come on? Like,
we have
to teach my whole team this.
I wish I had the perfect language for it, but like, you know how some people sell information, like here's my contracts, here's a bunch of videos, I'm selling information. So we have all that stuff, but what we're adamant about inside of this particular business is an unforgiving willingness to give, right? So like we teach the living snot out of this. So it starts with a 2-hour onboarding call. Well, you can bring your entire team to that two out. Now, the reality is they're not going to learn it on that first call. So then you get access to our website where I've broken down a novation deal in really like 11 steps. And then there's a 10 to 30 minute video specific to that step where you are that you can refer back to. You can constantly drive new acquisitions agents or TC or dispo people or realtors to that website to have them watch those modules. And then we have weekly coaching calls where we have about an 11-week cycle that we teach the same elements of that over and over and over. So our real goal is, yeah. So what our goal is not to just give you the information, it's to teach it to you. And our hopes are over about that 11-week cycle that most people have closed 2 to 3 Novation deals. I just talked to a guy that signed up in June. He has over 60 of them either closed or in his pipeline. His words, it was a game changer. He's a wholesaler that operates in 5 markets like Lexington,
60?
Kentucky. 60.
Dang.
So do the math at an average of 25,000 plus per, and he started in May or June. So
That's crazy.
Our real goal is to get you to close 2 or 3 of those deals. And then the reality is that you just don't need us much more, right? Like it's not a new list that you're marketing to. It's a conversation that, here's what happens. If you take 100 leads, about 10% of those fit our wholesale model. That's pretty standard. Yeah. So you got 90 leads left over. 50 to 60 of those 90 leads are not today opportunities. They're long-term nurture. We got to drip them to death. We got to follow up to death. They're 6, 12, 18 months out. That leaves about 30 or 40 people that are decision makers today with moderate motivation, a property that's in good or above average condition, which means I can take it to the retail market, and are more likely to be flexible with us on 2 terms than they are lowering their bottom line. They're saying things like, Carlos, that all sounds good, but I'm not going to give it away, right? John, that sounds awesome. You guys are really good to work with, but I'm not in any hurry. When you hear those 2 terms, which is about 40% of your leads, if you're listening to them right now, we can take them through a Novation conversation, explain what we're going to do. And here's what happens. People that aren't good at sales, that aren't disciplined enough to present it to each and every customer and do a terrible job of follow-up still convert 5%. If you suck at sales, you're at least disciplined enough to present it to every single customer that says no to your other offer. Do a decent job of follow-up, close 10%. If you're good at those 3 things, you should convert 15% of that. So now you're seeing 5 to 6 new deals out of every batch of 100 net leads that you're getting. At $20,000 conservatively via transaction, it's an extra $100,000 for every batch of 100 leads.
I don't know, man. I think I'm sold on this.
I just sign up for it, dude.
You guys know Matt Andrews, right?
Yeah.
After I explained this to him and walked him through it, he said, so the only reason you wouldn't do this is because you don't know how. Like, everybody always says, I can't find an agent. My sellers won't let me list it. They tell themselves all of these things of why they can't do it. I can tell you we convert about 15% of those. We do over 100 of them a year. I've been doing it for 10 years. This isn't something I just started doing in 2020 and think that it's pretty cool and I'm going to teach it while the wave ride. I've been doing it for 11 years. I go to public auctions and buy Novations. There's an attorney, 15 other qualified buyers, and an auctioneer there. The bidding doesn't meet reserve, and I go in and say, hey, there's a way I think I could get you a little bit more money if you'd be flexible with me on these 2 things. Are you willing to hear me out? It's not a hoax. It's more transparent. So
it was a lot for me to wrap my head around because I've never heard of it before.
So was wholesaling probably before you ever did your first deal. So was converting a lead to a listing and getting paid from a real estate agent. Like, all of that stuff was new until we learned it, right? Like, there's a good friend of mine that always says fear is always based on a lack of knowledge. The only way to overcome fear is to acquire more knowledge. So until people go out and either teach themselves how to do this, which the only problem is it's relatively new. Like, I think I've only been sharing this and teaching it for 2 years. Most of anything that you would get on YouTube or anywhere else is garbage. It's outdated. There's a lack of breadth of understanding. They haven't been doing it long enough to be able to understand the pitfalls. Like, you asked me earlier, what's the difference between a POA and an attorney in fact? So I was like, you know what? Let me get real good answer to that. And I asked my attorney, I said, why would someone ask that question? Because they don't know what the hell they're talking about. He said a POA assigns an attorney in fact. The POA is the document. The attorney in fact is the person. Because that doesn't even make sense that someone asked that question. What the hell are they trying to figure out? And I was like, probably a reason not to do Novation so they can get themselves off the hook and explain to their wife why they don't make more money. Like,
Oh,
there's a right way and a wrong way to do everything. There's plenty of people that do wholesaling the wrong way. They lock up deals too high. They renegotiate 75% of their contracts. They lie to their buyers about ARV and reno. The market's littered with them, right? There's a right way and a wrong way to do novations. All that I can tell you is that I've been doing it for 11 years. Like when you sign up, you get a library of documents that's 15 to 20 documents long. We over disclose. Only 50% of our deals close with a POA. The other 50%, they just either the seller doesn't want to give you a POA. We're buying from an estate that already has multiple executors or a POA assigned. You can't get a POA for a POA. So probably half or maybe even less of our deals close. It's not a necessary part of the deal.
More about the process. And that's what I think is why I want to sign up with you. Is it's not just, you're not just giving me documents, you're giving me the process. And that's the biggest
There's
thing.
a way to pitch it. There's a way you have to manage showings. You can't just have 40 showings in the first week and expect your seller to be okay with that. So we manage expectations on showings. Manage the communication with the title company. We manage ongoing communication. Someone asked me the other day, how do I keep the agents from being involved? We manage the whole TC process. I don't outsource to the title company or the real estate agent. We still keep that in-house.
Man, this is gold, man. And that's what our man Joe Grulian said in the comments. This is gold. Listen, Eric, I know you got a hard stop. It's 1 o'clock, man. I don't want to keep you past because you did us a great honor hopping on this little talk show of ours. And I guess I'll see you on the onboarding, man, because you got me sold, bro. I'm going to sign up, and then I'll let all of our viewers know how that goes for me as I'm locking up Novation. So I'll see you on there with my team, man. Cool. All right, brother. I appreciate you coming on. Thank you very much.
Catch you in Tampa.
Get it.
See you guys.
See
ya.
Man, that was fun.
You can take away your iPad now, bro.
Well, hang on, though. I want to keep it up for just a minute because I'm kind of curious how this really would affect this. Because, I always, I thought the money difficulty, right? Because, you don't have to take the house down. You don't have to put all the money up. Even if you were to wholesale that, you had to take the house down. But this, I didn't even think about transactional volume because we're saying as a wholesaler,
and even doing it at scale. And he's saying he does 100 a year. Listen, there's a lot of wholesalers out there who don't even do 100 a year. So he's saying transactional volume is high to make that shit ton of money. But where his novation profits are, you could do less transaction volume and make more money than you could have. And that's what he's saying.
I guess that too. But I'm saying existing leads that people have that they're already producing. It's almost like the transactional volume goes down low, but you're not adjusting the effort, but you're making more money on the back end.
No, man, it's true. Well, what's funny is there was a deal yesterday that came through that my acquisition guy messaged me on and asked me how much we could do, explain the situation. And I go, fuck, this would be a great novation. And then I go, fuck, I don't know how to do a novation. I go, wait, Eric's coming on tomorrow. Maybe I'll sign up for his course. Let's see if I like it. And I do like it. And that's the thing is otherwise that deal is going to go by the wayside. And I don't have that language in my contract. Ironically, I had it in an earlier contract and I never knew what it meant. And then when I had my attorney draw up my current contract, right, I got that one from somebody, some guru. And then my current one, it's not in there. So, John, I'm going to have to get with you on Investor Fuse, add some stuff to my contract once I take his course, get that language in, and redo all my automatic contracts. Because if you don't know, Investor Fuse does allow you to send your contracts out automatically through DocuSign. So it's all automated. So I got to redo that. But, yeah, it would make it easier. I'm pumped about it, dude. I'm sitting here I'm ready. My wallet's over here. I was like, man, I can't go off screen. I got to finish the show. I'm ready to go get the Amex card and throw it on there. I'm just waiting for my wife to comment in the chats giving me permission to do it,
Right. Yeah.
But he called anybody out. You heard what he said. He goes, the only reason why you wouldn't do it is because you don't know how and you don't want to make more money.
I think it's, I was thinking about it too. Like you talked about on your whole team. I'm curious from your perspective, having cold callers, having acquisitions, having transaction people, who do you feel like has to become the most knowledgeable and get most involved in adding this process to your business? It felt to me in my, lack of expertise in running an operation. That's a transactions manager has to like, because it's about the transparency, the communication with the seller, like being upfront with them, so you get to the point where you hand them that piece of paper and they're not like shocked out of their mind. What do you think?
Listen, I don't know enough about it because I've never personally done one. Given what I have heard from him on our show and other shows, I would say you're right. The TC, in my mind, the Mama P just gave her permission to buy Eric's Novation course. We're ready to go, baby, because she is our TC, and she's a phenomenal TC, one of the best in the game. We always get compliments, even though people don't know she's my wife, because in her email, it's her maiden name, not her wedded name or whatever you call it. So they don't actually know, and they're always giving her compliments. So I have full confidence that she'll be able to do it. The salespeople, they just got to give them the pitch, right? What do you say? Reasonable access and reasonable time. And they do that. It's already in the contract about buyer reserves the right to novate. Then the TC takes over. And I think we'll fucking crush it just because of the TC that we have. You know what I mean? Because I had, prior to her being TC, I had hands down the fucking worst TC. And like, it was me as an owner, you carry people. And I would have never been able to do this with my previous TC, but with this one, I know it would be hands off for me. And it's just one more weapon. I'm stoked.
I think that advice he gave of like, you have to do it one step at a time, because if you did people like 5 documents, their face would melt. I thought that was pretty funny. Just like one gradual step at a time, which will take a coordinated TC person.
Eric's a good shit talker. What people don't know is on our prequel, I said, do you give the documents? And he said, yeah, I'll give you the documents right now. He goes, I'll just be waiting for your call on Thursday when you don't know what to do with them.
Novation is not the legal language.
Okay. So no, and I see Tyler, my boy Tyler, not sure what's better, Eric's expertise with Novation or his 3-point jumper. This
I love that.
Beast. For people that don't know, my man Tyler is the one that sold me my first mobile home park. So I owe him a whole bunch, and I've personally never met him, but when I do, I'm gonna buy him a beer.
Love that. let me get it on that as well, that hang as well.
He's been trying to get me to join CG too. He keeps talking it up. I really got, and Eric's a part of CG. It's something that a lot of people are telling me, but Tyler's really been repping CG to me.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think he's doing a Novation presentation for CG right now. That's why he had to hop. For Eric, it's interesting though. Like, he sells a lot of his deals as turnkey rentals to investors, like civilian investors. The Novation to me is almost like you're providing a seller with a turnkey experience of selling it retail on the market. Like, you're really walking them through expectations, what it's going to look like, being super transparent. The biggest leverage point for people that's coming up in thought for me, for people listening to this, and even one of my buddies down here locally I hang out with that is interested in novations because he's tired of fix and flipping, is I think the biggest thing is like upstream when you're talking to leads, that so many people, if you're not doing novation, so many people are going to like throw away opportunities or move them to a long-term drip because, I'm curious if it's across all markets, if it's roughly 40%, I'm assuming it is, where you're talking to somebody that just needs like a few repairs in the house, not necessarily like a full renovation, that is moderately, like they would sell if it was like if it's a company they know, like, and trust, they know what the experience is going to be like, the price is good enough, you could tell them what the market's doing right now with higher interest rates, people aren't buying or don't have as much of a proclivity to buy right now. That is a huge opportunity. It's not going to take away. So like my buddy that's doing fix and flips, he's tired of doing fix and flips. It's not necessarily going to take away from those leads that need renovations, but you might be able to monetize more on the leads that you're getting and not have to do flips, is kind of like my synopsis of like this as I'm thinking about him during the interview.
I want to, good on Eric, but like, I feel like we need to steal what he said, and we need to say that it was invented on this show. I've never heard him say it before, but Novations is wholesaling 2.0, baby. And I just want everyone who's watching this to know that it was first said on this show. I'm hoping he's never said it before, but when he said it, I was like, Carlos, you're right. Like, you're capitalizing on a 2.0 version of V2, right? Like a version 2 of leads that wholesaling's like that version 1. It's like, yeah, you're going after the ugly house because it's all you know.
Yeah.
And you literally let all the other opportunities float around in the ether and you're just blinded to them. And that's very true. And our only other way to capitalize on them previously was to send them off to a realtor and hope that you could get a referral fee if you're licensed, or some side fee, because it's illegal to get a referral fee if you're not a licensed agent in most areas. Check with your attorney. But people try to do it anyway. So you're giving that away. Maybe you'll get paid, maybe you won't. Maybe the realtor will work it, maybe they won't, and you're leaving it up to them. So yeah, it's like a 2.0. You're capitalizing on these things, and I'm intrigued by it. And I mean, I told my team that I was having a meeting. I didn't tell them it was a podcast. I was like, I'm having a meeting to discuss if we're going to go down this route of doing innovations. They're excited because they see these opportunities that they can't touch, and they want to make more money.
Yeah,
it's our duty to our team to give them the best ways to make money, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think that was like the most insightful part to me is like every wholesaler in this industry is coming across these deals all the time. Like people are like, every way that you're generating marketing to talk about pain, people have pain and are calling you or whatever, texting you. Like, these opportunities are there, and until knowing how to handle them, you would just say sorry. Like,
and the thing is, Carlos said it, where you get a turnkey experience, like from the wholesaler or from the REI guy, the investor. And I think that's because most realtors, and having been one, we're not really trained to run a business. And business is about customer service. And as a wholesaler, you're not really, until you start to scale, you're forced to. So like the TCs for realtors, if they have one, and that's a big if, a lot of the larger producers do have TCs, they're not as good, in my opinion, as wholesaler, investor, flipper TCs, strictly because, and it's about reps. I'm doing 100 transactions, 120 transactions a year. The average realtor is doing 12. A crusher, the phenomenal agent, between 30 and 50. I'm tripling to doubling, if not 10xing what you're doing every single year. So yeah, my TCs, my processes are going to be better than the regular agent. So Carlos said, like, that white glove, that like concierge type of service, they're going to be a lot better off until realtors step their game up and really know how to handle customer service. And I'm not saying all realtors. There's a lot of killers out there who have a phenomenal process. And I would say it's probably due to how much money they make, because the more money you make, the more you can reinvest back into the business. So I think that goes back to Eric's comment about being in the higher end markets.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think the main objection too, if Eric was still on, the Brewmeister, I haven't heard Papa P give him a nickname yet, is like, if you're working with a savvy enough seller, think on it. If you're working with a savvy enough seller and you kind of explain what you're going to do as far as like listing it, you're going to see it on Zillow, your neighbors might come up to you and say, hey, we saw your house is for sale. The seller could potentially be like, oh, why can't I just list the property? So I'm curious what he teaches in the course, and I'm sure he has some good obstacle objections there as far as like listing it. And that's the same thing you could probably do with the realtor. It's like, hey, I'm not going to take commission out of this price, similar to wholesale. I'm not going to take commission out of this price. You know, the realtor's probably going to have you
they can't guarantee
X, Y, and Z. They can't guarantee it, timetable, everything like that. So I'd be interested, man. We'll have to hear on.
Me too. I'm excited
to hear.
This is not a willy-nilly thing that we're doing just to make more money. We have really reconvened or re-strategized the way we want to structure our business, and we don't. And I really loved what Eric said, where he was like, it's all up to, like, there's so many ways to do the business, whether you want to make one deal a month, do one deal a month, 5, 10, 20, you know what I mean? Like, and he's doing it at a high level. And it's like, I would love to do lower volume and have my man Tyler just send me more mobile home parks that I can buy, and do lower volume, like wholesale and flips and stuff, and really build my portfolio. I feel like that's the phase I'm at. And the whole dick measuring contest of who's the best wholesaler, like, someone else can try to win that. I just feel like, and novations give you that, because you're making double, triple, you're making more, and you're doing it on leads that other people aren't going after. I don't know. Those are my thoughts.
Super exciting stuff.
I think you're gonna have to do the course, figure out your process, and then build in a new transaction type in IF3.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Well, I actually already talked to Brittany about that. We were already talking about like adding, and I was
Mama
telling
P?
John I came up with some different transaction types I want to add in.
Love that.
Nice.
Glad
Multiple
Mama P signed
Transaction
off.
types in an IF3 near you.
Listen, I want to say something. We all know I love to give reviews, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to call motherfuckers out. I don't care who they are. It doesn't matter. And I'll give you the review on Brewster. I'm calling it Brewster's Millions. Remember, what was that? Wasn't that a movie? Brewster? Punky Brewster was a movie, but that's not the one I'm talking about. What was that? It was Richard Pryor, right? Wasn't it Brewster's Millions? Come on, where he had to spend all the money? It was like a movie from the 80s. Jesus.
No.
You Google it, watch it. It was a classic. Pretty sure it was Richard Pryor. Now, obviously, you didn't grow up in the right households where your parents and aunts and uncles educated you in proper cinema. Okay,
I'm
sure you probably didn't even watch
people.
like
So no, I grew up with 2 British people, so no.
Speaking of
And you are
movies,
correct. That is the movie, and it is Richard Pryor. Congratulations on your knowledge.
Speaking of movies, really quick, because we were talking about like Star Wars and like Luke Skywalker and everything like that. In San Diego last week, there's a place UMA, I believe it is, like driving because Rachel and Rick drove from Arizona to San Diego. We were at for the wedding last weekend. And apparently they filmed Return of the Jedi there, where like Luke Skywalker goes into Jabba the Hutt, jumps off the diving board, pulls himself back up. That whole song and dance is right there where you can see like the Mexican border in like Arizona. I thought that was pretty cool.
Oh man,
I love that.
Uma.
I love that. I got
Papa P kind of has like a Luke Skywalker, like the black like when he first goes in there. Somebody Google that image, Luke Skywalker, Return of the Jedi. Papa P has that exact thing. I wish you had a green lightsaber prop right now.
I'm waiting to introduce my son to it. My daughter absolutely loved it when I introduced, and I introduced her in the right way from the original 75 or whatever, the original movie, all the way through in order of when they made them, not in order of the
Interesting.
And
When did how old was she?
And I don't remember. I'm pretty sure she was like 8 or 9. Because I know because we had watched her before I introduced her to Doctor Who, which John knows because he's British. It's probably the only show that he watches is Doctor Who.
That's true. I'm like 3 seasons behind, but I have seen others.
But I'm very anxious to introduce my son into the Star Wars family.
I've been debating how to do that because he's getting to the point. My son is 2, and my youngest daughter is 7. So I'm like, we got to do it at a time when they could all watch it. And I'm like,
I just want to do it like the rest of the world had to do it.
Yeah,
like the rest of the world had to do it. You watch them in order that that he made them, and that's that.
Mm-hmm.
And you figure it out as you go.
Enjoy those moments. Yeah, enjoy those moments. I remember being like 7, 8 years old. Because at the same time, like when Jordan was winning, I remember watching Jordan, who was little, have pictures, 1st and 2nd grade pictures. I wore Bulls jerseys, but I remember my dad literally pausing the VHS of Star Wars and like explaining certain stuff going on. So enjoy those moments with your guys' sons.
That's a good dad.
I remember those vividly to these days.
I watched it with my dad too. That and Star Trek, although I never got into Star Trek as much.
Do they say Star Trek is kind of like the innovations to wholesaling, like Star Wars is like wholesaling? And do they say that?
I don't know if they do, but they do now, baby. They do now. Anyway. Other than that, I was going to say that I'm an action taker, and I am signing up for Eric Brewer, saying that was on this episode. Last episode, Carlos brought up this book. And all he had to do was sell me it, because Carlos is a great salesman, but honestly, I didn't need any of his skills. All he had to do was say it was Grant Cardone's favorite book. Yeah. And at that point, I got my 10X behind me. At that point, I was like, I was on Amazon as soon as the show ended, ordered it, and I started reading it. I'm a 10th of the way into it. I've got numerous page dog-eared, underlined. I'm loving it so far. So thank you very much. Psycho Cybernetics, Maxwell Maltz. Mm-hmm. I got it off Amazon. They gave me a nice little leather-bound edition.
Yeah, you got that black.
Very nice red spine, gold lettering.
I love it. Let's put this in the docket for a future episode, like a full Psycho Cybernetics breakdown. Probably right around where you're at. If you're like page 60-ish. the author gives advice to read, like, you're going to make your highlights and notes in there, but you almost read your own highlights. It's going to be right around that range, like every day for like 2 weeks to really get it to seep into your mind there. So we'll have to jam on that.
I think this is what every book, and this brings me into Pulse of the Week, what I wanted to talk about, but I think every book gives me a little something. And, sometimes books come into your life at the right moment. And this, I think, is exactly what I need at this season in my life, of like how I rethink who I am, who I tell myself I am, that mechanism, servo mechanism, right?
Literally perfect.
And so I definitely think this is what I need to get me to that next level. So I'll keep you guys updated on this. And that's kind of what I wanted. I had 2 things for Pulse of the Week. And Alex Hermosi had posted, and there was another guy I listened to that said it as well. And it's about reading for sport. And I'm paraphrasing and I'm kind of moving this around a little bit. It wasn't exactly his point in the post, but where as entrepreneurs, as business people, we love to dick measure. And not only do we dick measure bank accounts or transactions, but one of the things that people do if you go to enough masterminds is, what was the last book you read? How many books you've been reading? What books you read in this month? Notice how I use the plural, books, not a book. But books where a lot of us started reading for sport. I mean, what are your guys? And Alex Hermosi was saying, he's like, I'd rather see, people read 4 books a year, reread them, really implement them. And another guy I listened to, he was saying the same thing. He's like, to really implement what you're learning and not so much just keep reading and not doing anything with it. I am borderline between it because I don't read every book to implement. I read a lot of what I read to make who I am as a person, and I use it as like I'm building ammunition. I don't know if I'm going to need it now, but I need the theoretical understanding of it in order to shape my decision making, if that makes sense.
I think it's a mixture. I think like you're the sum of, what is that phrase? Like you're the sum of the people around you. I think
5 people around you.
Yeah, the books have a part of that too. Like if you're involved
in the TV shows, the music.
Yeah, you may not have to implement them, but they have an effect on who you are and how you show up. But I'm also in that kind of that when I read a book that I really am relating to and it can be impactful in my life, I want to analyze it, I want to study it, and I want to implement it. But not every book is like that. And you spoke just now, you said seasons of your life, right? Like everybody goes through different seasons. You could read a book and be like, oh, that was great, I can't really implement any of this right now. And then 3 years down the line, you hit a type of situation in your life where you're like, man, that thing, I'm going to go back to that book. And I'm going to really dive deep into it because this is the time when I'm going to start implementing some things from this book. But yeah, I don't think people should compare either. Like sometimes you're in a point in your life where you just have to do action more than you have the time to read, and the time to read can take away from the action, and it's not like you're reading less for not reading.
I think reading also keeps me more active mentally. And when I'm more active mentally, I'm more active in my business. Sometimes I go through a lethargic season where like you don't want to read. You're just kind of kicking the can down the road at work, doing a little bit here and there. And we all go through that, especially you can't grind. Listen, no matter what anyone tells you, you're not grinding 24/7 for 20, 30 fucking years, okay? It's up and down. It's a cycle. I don't know, Carlos, what are your thoughts on it, man? I mean, you're an avid reader.
Yeah, someone that like talks about reading a lot, I totally get that. I think I would play a little bit devil's advocate. I saw Hormozzi's post too. I'd play a little bit of devil's advocate against it because reading in general, like if you're doing that, if you're breaking down your life, like a good like stoic thing to do is break down your entire life into like a day, like whatever you want to do in your life, like what would you do in a day? So my ideal day, like you're reading at least some of the time because you're going to be like more in flow. You can choose how you want to kind of program your operating system. And I think there are certain books that you might read specifically, like a positioning book on CRM to understand how you're going to market your CRM. Versus Psycho-Cybernetics, which is straight like you're going to feel good reading it, like you're going to get into flow. But then also that's like a book that's going to impact like your core operating system. Like your MacBook is going to update to a new operating system every so often that has like some bug fixes or new features and functionalities. you have to have a staple of books of just however you want your operating system to be. And then you can look at people like Grant Cardone, or this is like the staple of like personal development type stuff. But like I brought a book to San Diego, the Expectations book I've mentioned. I read two chapters on it. So a lot of times in a book, I do like to go front to back, but more so against Hormozy's point now, like I can just dive into a specific chapter and see what I want to do about expectations. And that changed my whole, like the Expectations book. I took one thing out of it. Like I don't need to touch that book again and I'm good, because one of the chapters was talking about energy expenditure. And a lot of the times the example they gave was Barack Obama would have certain suits lined up like Zuckerberg does. Like you only wear certain outfits because you tell yourself in your mind, your expectations are like, if I look at my wardrobe every day or choose a wardrobe, it's going to get me more tired. The whole point of that chapter was like, that's pretty much bullshit, or that's false. That if you believe that to be true, that's what's going to happen. But you can also believe that doing stuff like that or tasks throughout the day give you more energy and focus. So like that
I don't know if I agree with that though. I believe in decision fatigue.
The book flips it. The book flips it. I was having this conversation with my girl the other night. Like the book flips it, and that's actually not true from this book's perspective. So the biggest thing that I'm working on implementing, and I can kind of cap on this because I have a meeting coming up too, and want to let you guys close it out. But like the biggest personal project that I'm working on that I find interesting is I've for a long time, like my entire adult life, my brain, I tell myself that I need 8 hours of sleep to feel fully good. That's all well and dandy when I'm just a single guy living by myself. But what I came to realize is like, man, I would love to be able to sleep like 6 hours, and it can go gradually, but I was like, man, I would love to be able to sleep 6 hours and just feel absolutely money. So now I'm intentionally starting a project, like just a little side project, which all it entails essentially is telling myself I can sleep a lot less hours. And I've done it before where you watch like yogi videos on YouTube of people that can just sleep like 4 or 5 hours and are completely good.
No. The science of sleeping, bro. The science of sleeping. I'm not saying you can't do it and feel that way, but what is happening internally to your body, your testosterone levels? What is happening? Oh, dude, I know you got to go.
What's the
name of this book for everybody? What's the name of this book that's basically refuting all common knowledge and common sense?
Let me see, dude.
Is it called Anti-Common Sense?
No, the expectation effect. How your mindset can transform your life, and that's like This is like a popular entrepreneur. Like you know how the Hormozy book like a year ago was like really popular, $100 million offers. This isn't to that level, but it's getting popular.
I believe what you're saying though, that your mind can set expectations. But I experienced decision fatigue, and the sleeping, dude, I could go on.
Because that's what you believe. Dude, read Psycho-Cybernetics. You'll learn. You'll get that.
Oh, okay. Okay, guys, that's it. I'm only sleeping 5 hours and my body's going to be totally fine.
It's going to take time, dude. It's going to take time. But we'll see. We'll see. And this is coming from someone that loves my sleep more than anything. I have blackout curtains, black canopy. My entire room is just completely black, but it will be interesting. But that's what it is, dude, because I'm coming from the same perspective as you. It's like, oh, that's bullshit. Like, that doesn't work. But this book would refute it, and it makes sense.
Well, the only other thing I wanted on Pulse of the Week, and it's not a big topic, is they are tearing down one of the most expensive homes on Davis Island. Derek Jeter's old house. Tom Brady, when he joined the Tampa Bay Bucks, he rented it from Derek Jeter right on Davis Island, one of the highest valued areas, richest places on the water over on the bay in Tampa. And they're tearing it down. Somebody bought it for $22 million. It spans 3 different lots. And I looked at the photos. This thing is a palatial. But it's like there's always a bigger shark. Somebody with even more money buying it to tear it down to assumedly build their own version of their ideal dream house on Davis Island. So I am anxious to see how that's going to go. But it's just like, how much fucking money do you have to have to buy $22 million house just to tear it down? And I guess they all know because there was a demo permit approved or something for it. So
that's crazy.
22 mil. Derek Jeter, Tom Brady lived there. I mean, it's a phenomenon. So it's not like an old beat down house. I mean, Tom Brady and Giselle are not living. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Come on.
I'm gonna look
Anyway.
what's up. That'd be interesting.
For all you local Floridians, keep an eye on Davis Island. Changes are happening. We'll see more. Anybody who knows who bought it, I would love to know. I'm thinking it's got to be. God, you got to be a billionaire at that point. You got to be worth $1 billion or 500 million
Yeah,
minimum.
it goes back to like our Elon Musk conversation. Where like
Bill Gates may have bought it.
We think $1,000 is a lot, and
Yeah.
then when you're a billionaire, $1 million is like 1,000 or whatever it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So we'll see. We'll see. I just
Yeah.
wanted to talk about it. I forgot to talk about it last week on Pulse of the Week because it got, I think it was last Thursday, all this came out. So,
Mhm.
all right, guys.
Look that up.
Excellent episode. Hour and 34 minutes.
Excellent.
Let's do it, baby. Episode 28 in the books.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
Lock and load.
Awesome. See you guys.